What is up, you fantastic, wonderful people? It's your boy. My car decided to not start today, so I guess I'm recording a video and skipping school. Back at it again. Today, I want to talk about the trend I just hate in Hollywood, okay? The trend that really makes me want to grip every Hollywood executive by the balls and start beating them senseless, and that is the to be continued screen. Like, every single big budget Hollywood blockbuster film has gone down the path of using one of these fucking things, and there's a nice little Avengers level threat to blame for it. Like, I love Marvel movies, don't get me wrong, they've always been a great pleasure of mine, even if they kinda suck nowadays, but that's besides the point. The point is, I also really like the ending to Infinity War and how it set up Endgame and the cliffhanger there. It was a really nice way at finishing off one story, getting people hyped for the next story that came out in a timely fashion. I'll go into further details on this cliffhanger later and we'll talk about it more in a second, but for right now, all you need to know is that Marvel did this and they did it pretty well, and they fucking opened Pandora's box for every Hollywood executive to say, huh, this thing works. You may be asking yourself why I'm so heated on this topic right now. And that's because I just got out from seeing Wicked, and you know, that was a really weird experience for me all around. I found myself seeing this movie by myself on a Friday at like 11 a.m. You had some couples in the theater, there's some families, there's a bunch of little girls all dressed up, and then here comes 6'3", fucking 220-pound Sloshy just sitting in the back corner, like hiding with his cap and shit. It was a weird experience, but that's besides the point. And I full on expected to hate this movie because I just hate musicals, like with a few exceptions. And even though I like Ariana Grande's music, she's never captured me as like, oh my god, the next Oscar level actress. She only ever plays like the self-absorbed prick in every movie, which it's kind of how I imagine her in real life, so I guess it checks out. And when this movie slowed down and didn't feel the need to showboat Ariana Grande's belting, it was pretty good. And I saw myself getting pretty invested until... That's right! To be continued! I had a feeling this was coming because at the very beginning they snuck in a little like part 1 in the corner of the title card, so that kind of threw me for a loop right there at the beginning. I was like, this isn't gonna do what I think it's doing, right? That's not going in this direction, and at last it did. I don't know if I'm just an idiot, but I never saw like any promotion promoting this thing as a part 1. I just assumed it was Wicked and it was done. And I was only get to see one movie and not sit down through 2 movies. And now there's a second movie coming out like next year. Like, when did that happen? Why am I doing this? I don't even know. Because if I had known that this was a part 1, there's no shot I would have gone and sat down and watched through a whole half a movie for 2 hours and 40 minutes just to go and watch another 2 hour and 40 minutes movie next year, when I could have just watched them both together next year. Another movie falling to unsatisfactory endings to build up unearned hype for a second movie when and if that movie comes out, just so they can make a worse viewing experience for everyone. Go fuck yourself, Hollywood. This movie does not end satisfactory. In fact, I'd argue it ends unsatisfactorily. This movie does not end satisfactorily. Satisfactorily. This movie does not end well. I would actually argue that it ends unwell. I don't know big words. Okay, I'd argue it hits a peak, starts to climax, then it just stops, hits you in the balls a few times, and sends you home alone with blue balls the whole night. She finally becomes the witch, and that's literally like the turning point in the story from what I can gather, like the big moment. And that's when we're gonna cut all momentum. This is what a plotline looks like for most films. This is kind of universally accepted as the norm in storytelling. But recently, because of this trend of movies that Hollywood's been shoving down our throats, we have started to get like schizophrenic plot lines that look like this. It starts off looking normal, gives you some exposition, and slowly starts to rise before reaching a climax, and then instead of slowly resolving, it, boom, cuts off, straight line down before giving us some more exposition, lead us back into this world, reclimbing the mountain of rising action to reclimax, and then finally getting a slow coming to conclusion. This is bullshit, and yeah, while it may superficially build hype for a second movie, it completely ruins the rewatching experience of the first movie, maybe even the second movie. You get the experience that's a bit too jumpy, it's like it gets a sense of deja vu because you have to do everything twice just to get to the end. It's not just continuing the story in a well-earned way, it's dragging the story on for some extra Benjamins. What's even worse is when the movie they just edged you for doesn't even come out. Like, sometimes you don't even have a guaranteed date of when the next one comes out. Like, yeah, at least Wicked has like a part 2 coming. Endgame already had a date before Infinity War came out. Fast 10 came out in 2023. Where's the next one? Expected June of 2026? It's not even guaranteed. It's just expected to maybe. It possibly could be this date. Our experts say we don't really know. It just might. Give us some time. Like, what? That movie ended off on the biggest cliffhanger. The whole family is dead. Jacob is dead. The hot one is undead. No. I said the hot one is back. And then it just ends and it's like, come back in Fast X Part 2. Where is it, Vinny? Oh, that movie didn't do as well as you thought. It didn't make enough money. It didn't make $1 billion at the box office. So you're having to rework everything that you planned for Part 2 and bring it back down to street level because you kind of jumped to conclusions that the movie would make a lot of money. That's what happened. How are you gonna go from, we're driving through skyscrapers, we're going to space, we're using like burning helicopters as wrecking balls on the highway, to, you want to race for pink slips, bro? Like, how is that gonna be a satisfying ending to what you've set up in the last few movies? The key to making a good Part 1 and Part 2 is having it feel earned and be demanded. If you have a story that demands a Part 1 and Part 2, and you have it planned out and you film them back to back and you know what you're doing in both of them already before either one goes into production, sure, there's a time and a place for it. A lot of these films have not earned it and it just feels like a lazy attempt for some extra cash to get fans to come back for a second viewing of the same movie. Like the newest Mission Impossible. Why the hell is this thing a Part 1 and Part 2? I feel like Mission Impossible is totally a series that's earned the right to do a big, explosive Part 1, Part 2 if they wanted to do that sort of thing. But this newest one did not have to be a Part 1, Part 2. What the hell happened in Part 1 where it's like, yeah, this was a fantastic series of events. A lot happened here. The characters pretty much remain unchanged. They only completed half the mission. Like, it's still going to be a continuation of the same mission. It's not like some big thing happened that changed the course of the mission. Like, they were pretty successful at the mission. It was just dragged out the first half of the mission of getting that stupid key thing or whatever. The whole marketing campaign was just showing Tom Cruise motorcycle jumping off a cliff, which was pretty cool seeing in the movie, but lost all of its hype after you've seen it in the theater 30 times. They could have so easily had the whole train showdown as a mid-movie showdown, and then the second half of the movie be shutting down the entity, and bam, you got one great action-packed movie inside the Mission Impossible universe with no filler and all killer. But no, instead we get a fun movie, but an ultimately unsatisfying movie. Because it just stops halfway, and even though we haven't seen the next one, because they didn't film them back to back and they waited to see that Dead Reckoning Part 1 was actually one of the worst performing films in the franchise, so they had to cut the budget to make the next film less expansive, so they could hopefully earn a bit more, probably affecting the plotline and the way the story was originally intended to go. Maybe, who knows? I don't know. Could be. All I'm saying, don't be surprised if Tom Cruise ain't motorcycle jumping. The aforementioned Avengers Infinity War Endgame is a two-parter done right. Why, you may ask? I'm glad you asked. That's because they had the decency to give us two full movies that both have a rising action, a climax, a falling action, a resolution, exposition. They both are their own movies in their own right and both can be enjoyed without the other one, but together they create a big, long, epic story. They are not dependent on one another to tell that story though. Instead of this schizophrenic abomination, we just get two regular plot lines. So instead of feeling like you just went on a narcotics trip trying to watch two movies, you just felt like you watched two movies that really flowed into each other well. Can you imagine how much worse Infinity War would have been? If right as Thanos' forces show up on Wakanda and Thanos himself shows up on, I don't know, Mars or wherever they were, it just shot up a to-be-continued screen and cut off all pacing and momentum they were just building up right before the climax started.
I think you'll find our will equal to yours.
You'd probably be pissed because it wasn't a full movie and it left an unsatisfying taste in your mouth. So why the hell is everyone okay with Wicked ending at a to-be-continued screen right when the turning point happens and the climax is just starting to build to an epic climax? Why are we just okay with that? And I'll let you in on a little secret, Hollywood. You can make a movie start to finish and then tease the future direction of the series. You did that for like 40 years. So I don't know why in the last few years you feel like you have to just throw up a to be continued screen. You can tease the future of a series without just cutting a movie off halfway. Did you know that? You did for like 40 years. That's all Hollywood did. You don't have to bank on a sequel to generate hype. The Spider-Verse films have done really well, but it takes so ungodly long to make because the animation is that beautiful that they just pulled that movie from the release schedule and just left the big to be continued up as a cliffhanger for God knows how long. Alita Battle Angel is a great example of a movie that has a full plotline and teased the directions ahead in the sequel, so in case it didn't get a sequel, like it may or may not, it doesn't ruin the experience of watching that movie. I have no problem with this. If the fans love a series and the creatives love making a series, why not? I'm not against sequels. Like, have fun, make series, make big IPs. I love that. Just don't make half-assed movies. Because then if you become an Alita Battle Angel, where who knows if we're ever gonna get a second one, because I think James Cameron is having more fun with the blue people, because they didn't bank on a sequel by throwing up a big to be continued screen, and they just teased the direction of where the series could go, you can still go back and watch that film and have a full viewing experience, and it's great. This should be how it is in all movies, and it was like this for the longest time, so why can't it continue to be like this? And I have had just about enough of this bullshit that Hollywood is putting us up against and expecting us to take it like they're little pups. So I'm gonna stand up. I'm gonna stand up today and say, we're not gonna take it, Hollywood. We're not gonna take your bullshit anymore. I wanna sit down and watch a full movie with a full exposition, with a full rising action, with a climax, with a resolution, with a falling action. I want it all. Who's with me? Let's stop this together.